Hey golfers, Lou here for Golf Avenue, and today we're trying out drivers. That's right, we're going to compare different generations of TaylorMade drivers against one another. We'll compare the three latest driver releases against models from 5 and 10 years ago in an attempt to see, is newer really better? Alright, so before we go any further, we'll be taking a look at the drivers we'll be testing out today. I've got a few TaylorMade drivers with me. The oldest one we'll be looking at is the SLDR from 2014. We'll be looking at the M4 from 2018, the M5 from 2019, Sim 2 Max from 2021, the Stealth from 2022, and this year's newest releases, the Stealth 2. So for this test, we'll be using a TrackMan simulator in order to give you the best data possible on each strike we make with the drivers. The system should allow us to compare different data points in order to see which driver is really the best one, or which one is giving us the best performance. So here's how the testing will be going today. I'll be hitting all the shots with the drivers. We'll be keeping the three best drives from each clubs, which will serve as a basis to compare the performance from one another. Also, this test will allow us to answer a few key questions that our experts have been asked before from some of you guys at home. Questions such as, which generation offers the best performance? Or which generation is the most forgiving? Or which generation is the best bargain for, let's say, a beginner, an intermediate golfer, or even an expert golfer? So make sure to stick around until the end of this video to see which driver performed best, which one was most forgiving, and which one was best for beginners, intermediate, and expert golfers. Oh, and one more thing before I forget, guys, real quick. We're going to be using a DTL camera just so you can get all the angles when I'm hitting the balls. We're going to be fast forwarding through the shots just so we make the video more efficient and more tightly. But aside from that, you'll still get to see all the balls and see how I've hit them and how they perform and how each trajectory went on the screen. So make sure to stick around and see all of this. Alright guys, we just finished with the testing phase. Now it's time to compare our drivers. We'll be looking at each one of them separately, and then we'll compare all of them together and we'll answer the question that we posed at the start of this video. So let's start with the Sim 2 Max. That's the first driver I started my testing phase. Let's see what the results were. So right off the bat, the Sim 2 Max I've always personally liked. It's a driver that has always felt like it suits me when I'm at address standing over the ball right off the tee. It feels nice for me, it looks nice for me, but from what I've seen with the data that I've gathered from my test, I can confidently say that it's not only suitable for me, but it would probably be suitable for any golfer looking for a reliable and forgiving driver. In terms of performance, I did not hit my longest drives with the Sim 2 Max, but it did feel nice on every single strike I was hitting. And it was definitely the club that felt most comfortable for me throughout the entire testing phase. It needs to be said that we use a club head with a 9-degree loft. This is the lowest loft we use for this test, and it probably skewed the numbers a bit just to make the strikes a bit further with the Sim 2 Max, but it's not the end of the world. Frankly, the 10.5 degrees performed just as well, and the dynamic launch angle that I gathered from the test and from the TrackMan were pretty much similar, around 14 degrees for all of the clubs. But I have to say the Sim 2 Max was quite impressive to me, and I would recommend it to any golfer out there simply for the feel and the forgiveness that it provides off of every single strike. Next up, we have the Stealth driver from TaylorMade, released in 2022. This driver made a lot of noise upon release, simply for the fact that it had a full club face made out of carbon fiber entirely. That was a first for TaylorMade, not a first in the industry though. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, we're talking about 60 layers of carbon fiber stacked on top of one another to make a very strong and resistant club face for the Stealth. That was one of the bigger selling point. It was one of the bigger topic of the year in 2022 when it first came out on the market. And it's also part of the reason why I was so apprehensive to hitting this club. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what the feel was going to be like hitting the ball off the club face. And after hitting it, I can confidently say that it does feel great off the club face. It's not your typical feel that you get with a titanium club face, but it does feel nice and it's extremely consistent. That was the biggest thing for me. My dispersion was the lowest of all the clubs I used. Even though I said the Sim 2 Max felt better for me, the dispersion with the Stealth was the lowest one of them all. I felt like when I went to put the ball on a certain line, I was able to get it on that very line. In terms of distance, it wasn't the craziest one. It did provide plenty of distance and on every single strike, but I did not feel like it was the best performing for me in terms of distance overall. The Stealth driver is an excellent choice for any golfer looking for forgiveness on the golf course, and you'll even be able to get a little more extra distance out of it if you have an older driver from maybe 5 or 10 years ago. But since it was only released a year ago, the Stealth will still hold a very good monetary value, which means that if you want to get one in your bag, you might have to shell out a bit more cash than if you were to look at some older options that were released a few years ago. Talking about older options, let's take a look at one that was released 5 years ago, and I'm talking about the TaylorMade M5 driver. As I mentioned before, the M5 was released in 2018, but it gained full notoriety in 2019 when Tiger used it to win his 5th green jacket. It's no wonder that the big cat loved this club. He got to adjust it to his specific liking with the rail-mounted adjusted weight on the sole of the club, and he also got to make the most out of twist face from TaylorMade, which allows him to control every strike and pinpoint the exact location off the club face when he wanted to. This is very interesting and very important with M5, because one of the things I noticed when I was testing it is that if you're not going to hit the sweet spot, or if you're not going to really hammer the spot you're going to hit, you're going to be in trouble. One of the things that was said about Tiger in 2019 on the back nine is he was going, and we'll just use the club here as an example, he was going really more closer to the heel or more that section right here to find fairways with the driver. Personally, when I was hitting this section of the club, it didn't go as well for me because I'm not Tiger was obviously. But when I did manage to hit the sweet spot or a little higher near the toe of the club, that was really the sweet spot, and you could feel the ball flying off it, and I was really able to control the ball at that point. But if you're going to miss the sweet spot and hit maybe a little more off the toe, a little off the heel, higher in the club face, lower in the club face, you're going to struggle. It's normal. This club is definitely destined for higher hand skill players. Players that are able to shape the ball around the golf course and really hit the same spot on the club face consistently. But it needs to be said that if you're a golfer looking for more forgiveness, and maybe a club that will provide you with more consistency on every strike, even if you miss a sweet spot, then I probably have something for you, the M4. Okay, now for a forgiving option, the M4. It was released a year before the M5, and it's definitely the opposite of what the M5 is supposed to do. The M4 is there to provide you with forgiveness and to help players who are not as consistent with their strike still find the fairway and hit longer strikes. One of the things with the M4 was the introduction of the twist face that I mentioned earlier with the M5. The M4 was the introduction of the twist face to the TaylorMade line, and it clearly makes a difference. I was able to benefit off of it when I was testing earlier the clubs. I can say that even my off-center strikes felt pretty good, and I was never really terribly in trouble. Even if I missed the sweet spot in the club face, the ball would never fly off too far offline or would never make something crazy. One thing that needs to be said about the M4 is that in terms of distance, it stacks up really well to the brand new drivers. And in terms of average carry distance, this was the longest driver for me during my testing phase. It did not roll out as long as some of the newer drivers, simply because the spin rates for this driver are way higher. This is another thing that's in place to help golfers with a slower swing speed get the ball up in the air when they hit the ball off the tee. So what I would say about the M4 is that for a driver that is like 5 or 6 years old now, it still stacks up very, very well to the newer models on the market. So if you're in the market for a new driver, but you're looking for something forgiving, and you're in the market for used or pre-loved drivers, the M4, I really strongly suggest looking into that one. It performs very well, offers a lot of forgiveness, and feels great off the club face. I would recommend it to any golfer looking for just something reliable off the tee. But while the M4 still compares well to these brand new drivers, it probably be interesting to take another trip back down memory lane and see how far can we go back in time to compare to these brand new drivers. Maybe the SLDR? Talking about the SLDR from TaylorMade. Yeah, that's right, the oldest driver we're testing out today. It was also the driver I was most excited to try out. simply because I was so excited to see how well it would match up compared to those brand new drivers that I also got to test during our testing phase. One of the things I'll say about the SLDR right off the bat, it's the look. It's got that old school look of the big club head, titanium look that we love, and it's still got that pingy sound that we used to love from titanium heads. Not as bad maybe as perhaps like the Sasquatch driver, if you guys remember that was the loudest of the bangs. This is still a pretty good ping though, and you like to hear it. Nice old school feel, if you will. As soon as you flip the club over, it's not that old school. You'll see that there's a rail mounted adjusted weight, much like the M5. The M5 has two, one at the heel on the back of the sole, one running across from the face to the back of the sole. In the case of SLDR, they just got one weight running along the sole near the face of the club. Again, this is simply there to help you adjust the club to your liking and whatever ball trajectory you prefer. What I'll say about the SLDR is that it surprisingly still compares very well to the new drivers. We'll address the elephant in the room right away. The distances are not as great. The discrepancy is very minor though. It's probably 5 to 10 yards at max, depending on driver, depending on swing speed, and depending on where I was with the testing. I think it was in the later drivers that I tested, so I might have been a little more tired. But the distance discrepancy is not that major compared to the price that you would be paying for the brand new driver who would give you those 5 to 10 extra yards. So this is a crossroad, right? This is where you got to ask yourself, am I willing to pay the extra money, $200, $300, $400 more that I would have to pay for the newest driver on the market to gain 5 or 10 yards? Or should I stick with the older model from a couple of years ago, or maybe 5-10 years ago, that will give me pretty much the same performance on the course, but I'll be saving, again, $400 or $500 on the price tag. So this is where you have to make a decision when it comes to these types of drivers. But in terms of performance and forgiveness, really hard to knock the SLDR in this case. It still performs very well. One thing about the forgiveness of the SLDR is that it won't be as overwhelming as it was with the M4, simply because the SLDR was designed as a player's club, which meant that you've seen it with the rail mount adjustment weight. It is meant to be adjusted to the specific needs of the golfer so that they can maximize their performance. It's not necessarily made to be super forgiving like the M4. So although I didn't have any trouble finding the fairway, it's not its primary job when you're out on the course. Its job is more to maximize your performance. But as I mentioned earlier, this is no wonder that the SLDR is made for performance. It's got the rails just like the M5 and like some still newer models that TaylorMade is really releasing. And while we're on the subject of newer models, we might as well look at the last driver from our test and what also happens to be the newest driver in the list, the Stealth 2 from TaylorMade. Alright, so the Stealth 2 was released earlier this year as a follow-up to this original Stealth, as you can obviously guess. The differences between the two are mostly minor, almost only cosmetic. If you look at the original sim, you'll see when you look at the club face, especially near and around the club face, on the edge of the club face, there's a slight edge, I don't know how to call it any other way. This small edge is very thin near the bottom and the side edges of the club face. But if you look at the top line of the club face, this small edge becomes wider. This same edge can be found on the newer model. However, the larger part, it runs all around the club face this time around. We've seen online some videos of people having their club face explode off their Stealth driver, the original one. I think that's one of the things that TaylorMade wanted to tackle with this small change, just to avoid having club face exploding all around the golf courses with golfers being unhappy with their clubs, right? So one thing about the Stealth 2 is the feel for the ball off the club face is much better than from the original. I didn't spend too much time on that from the original, but that was one of my complaints. It was really hard to have a feel for the ball, simply because there was the new carbon fiber face. I think it's still a new technology. It still needs time to be developed and improved. But there's already improvement showing with the second club, because hitting ball, I was really more able to feel where I was making contact with the ball off the club face. That also leads me to one thing, is that I was never really able to find the sweet spot for me with the Stealth 2. I always felt like I was able to make good contact with the ball, but never really find the spot that was the right one for me. But on the other side, The great thing about this club is that TaylorMade markets it as forgiveness. So this is a combination, obviously, of far and forgiveness, in the sense that yes, the Stealth 2 flies far. It goes very, very far when you hit it, but it also needs to be said that the forgiveness is not lacking on this one. It was by far the most forgiving club. I knew, even if I was, like I said, I couldn't really find my sweet spot, but even when I was missing a sweet spot, I was still hitting very good strikes that were not too far away from the fairway, even off-center ones. Overall, there's no denying the quality of the Stealth 2. I was able to hit my longest drive with it. The feel for the ball was amazing, and it was highly forgiving. If you're willing to spend the money on it, and if you're into the market for a brand new driver, this is definitely a great option for anyone. So which driver seems like the best bargain for beginners, intermediate, and advanced golfers? Well, the answers will probably make sense for most, so let's start with beginners. Budget-wise, I would always recommend the SLDR. It's the best value that you're going to get. It still performs great, still offers plenty of forgiveness, and it's super affordable for most people, especially if you're just trying to build your first bag. This should come in at about, like, we'll say 150, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, depending on the season, depending on the time of the year, depending on a bunch of circumstances, and also the condition, which also can affect the price at any time. You should be able to get this driver for relatively low price, or a quarter or even less of what you'd be paying for this new here, the Stealth 2. If you can afford to spend a little more, maybe go with the M4. Honestly, it's as I mentioned, and you guys have heard already, I've been praising this driver like crazy today, and I really believe that this one can fit in any golfer's bag, especially golfers looking for more forgiveness. This is the way to go for you, and it's still super affordable right now, again, when you compare it to newer drivers in the market. But if money is no object to you, and if you've got not unlimited funds, but if you got a sizable budget and you just want to spend on the best clubs possible that will last you the longest time, well, the answer is quite obvious here. The most forgiving one, even for beginners, will be the Stealth 2 driver. Super forgiving, flies great off the club face, and you'll never have any trouble with it. And like with such a brand new technology with carbon fiber club faces, you'll probably be set for the next 10 years, and your club will be relevant again down the line and will probably perform just as well as other drivers that will be on the market at this time. So in terms of intermediate golfers or mid-handicappers, much like me, I would probably turn towards something a little more pricier, simply just to get more performance out of your driver. But also, I would go towards something a little more recent just because I want to get, again, more performance out of my driver. So in this case, I would go with the Sim 2 Max if you're looking for something a little more forgiving and something that will allow you to still make mistakes off the tee with your strikes, but still perform very well at any time. Or if you're looking to make something happen on the course or trying to get around some trees or shape a shot, the Sim Max will still allow you to do that without too much issue. I'm talking Sim 2 Max here, not Sim Max. But if you're looking to spend a little more again and you're looking to getting to the next level of skill as golf-wise, the Stealth will be the move for you, the original Stealth. It flew great for me. It went far. I personally, the only knock I would give it is the feel for the ball off the club face, but that's really not the end of the world. Otherwise, it'll give you excellent performance, especially if you're a mid-handicapper. It'll probably allow you to unlock that next step you're trying to get to. Finally, for experienced players or advanced players, you probably know what I'll recommend already, but I'll be going with the M5 from TaylorMade. As I said, the performance when you hit the sweet spots are incredible. You're able to shape it the way you want it. You're able to push it as far as you can, depending on your swing speed. The one thing, though, is that if you're not consistent off the tee, you're going to struggle with that club. Missing the sweet spot is a dead sentence, if you will, off the tee. You're not going to get the results you want. You're going to have either a really short drive or something that's completely out of line. For experienced players, I would also go with the Stealth 2 or the original Stealth. The only thing is I would probably go with the player models for these ones, so the Stealth Plus and the Stealth 2 Plus, just because these drivers are probably better suited for players with a faster swing speed and also someone who might be looking to take their performance to the next level or maybe to their limit. The Plus models for these drivers would probably serve you best and allow you to unlock all your capabilities on the course. I hope this video has provided you with some helpful insight on how TaylorMade drivers have developed over the years, and that it has helped you figure out which one is best for you. For more content featuring all your favorite golf clubs from back in the day, make sure to subscribe to the Golf Avenue channel, and to grow the community, make sure to leave us a like. And one more thing before I go, if you're interested in any of the golf club mentioned in the video, if you want to take a closer look at it, or maybe add one to your bag for next season, or for the season coming, make sure to head down in the comments. We left a link to each one of these drivers, so you can take a personal look at each one of them and see maybe which one would be best for you. For Golf Avenue, I've been Lou. Until next time.